Hello and welcome to Planet Product Owner Video Edition. This is your host Scott again, coming to you with yet another video that you and your team, I hope, will take into a breakout session together and talk about it. The podcast, if you haven't checked that out yet, obviously Planet Product Owner, you can find it on any platform that you like. We really talk about the art of what we do as a product owner, and there's a lot of work in there for teams and Scrum Masters alike. And even if you're a leader, I think you're going to find a lot of the videos and a lot of the podcasts really helpful in your journey. So now we're coming to a video presentation, which is great for me because audio is so limited, and my listening audience, the journeyers, have been asking me for more content. Today's topic, we're going to talk about working agreements. What are they? Why do we need them? And how to maybe get started. I'm going to give you some thinking patterns around those and maybe some concepts and topics that you can take back and use to make your team working agreements pretty effective for you. Now, what are team working agreements? If you're new to what we use team working agreements for really is setting expectations and managing to those expectations. I've told you before in the podcast a lot around setting and managing expectations. Now, as a product owner and as a team working in this agile development or agile delivery model, we want to make sure that we're anticipating as many objections as we can, right? And so, teamwork and agreements, I take the approach of, hey, what kinds of questions can I get asked by somebody, and how can I clear that up in a living, breathing document somewhere that's published online for all to see? Because we want to make sure that our work is visible, but we also want to make sure that our working agreements are visible. So that makes sense, right? So, there's a lot of topics out there and a lot of templates, and my lord, I have seen template after template so elaborate and all of this on, you got to write this big dissertation about team working agreements. Guys, we don't have to make it that complicated. It's not that hard. Okay. So I'm going to give you a few topics that you could include into your team working agreements. You might take all of them, some of them, none of them. You might just combine them all, put them together and make them your own, and that is great. That's what I want you to do. I want you to think through them for yourself and see what it is that you can learn from yours truly. That's why I'm doing this. So, off to the races we go. Now, again, I'm going to put in a few topics here, maybe, or concepts or outline type deal for you, just to get you thinking about team working agreements. So, the first one we're going to start with is your general working agreements. This is basically what applies to all of our work, and you can use it that way. No problem there. Um, what are we going to hold each other accountable to? And just really basic agreements. And a lot of times you'll find, that we're going to, I'll show you some examples here on the screen. But a lot of times you're going to find, that we're going to respect each other's input. We're going to respect the Scrum values, or we're going to respect the Agile Manifesto. Let's make sure that we're being really clear, though, here so that a third grader can read it, right? And we want to make sure that, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my 3-year-old sticker, stick it on my head because that's how I handle these things. And you already know that from the podcast. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to show you here, there are a few buzzwords, and I've talked about domain language before in the podcast a lot. Now, I'm not going to go into the deep analogy that I might on the podcast, but I'm going to share with you real quickly here. Domain language is a really important part of us communicating with each other because we get on the same terminology, and that's important for us. So we might want to incorporate some buzzwords into our general agreements here. Wham! Wait a minute. I don't get it. We're talking about something now. I'm lost as an Easter egg in high grass. You got to dig me up out of here, right? So if somebody says wham, they're saying, hold on a minute. Let's back up a second. I didn't really get that part. Okay. Maybe another buzzword for your team is pineapple or something. I don't know. But you're letting the team know, look, I'm a little overwhelmed. I could use some help here without like truly fully admitting that you're drowning, right? So maybe consider something like that. Now, obviously, we don't want to interrupt folks. We want to stay on mute when we're not speaking. How are we going to handle disputes? What happens when something like that happens? Let's outline our office hours and then maybe dive in a little bit to our testing approach, our review approach, and things like that, right? And then maybe even what happens when a team member gets pulled into an emergency. How are we going to handle that? Okay. Now, my personal favorite is leave for the day after you've done your sprint demo because we've been sprinting, sprinting, sprinting. We've been running around like crazy trying to get this thing out the door. We got it done. We showed our work. Product owner accepted all the stories. We're going out, right? We're done. Now, finally, the last acronym here, I guess, for you is this ELMO concept. This is a really neat one. When you're banging up the topic a lot and everybody's just kind of, we've gone round and round and round and round and round, and everybody seems to get it. ELMO, enough. Let's move on, right? So speaking of Elmo, I'll call Elmo here. Let's go to the next topic. So I think it's important for non-team meetings, and work sessions to be acknowledged in your team working agreements. Acknowledge them. I'm not saying that you have to define each one of them. I'm just saying we can probably classify these pretty quickly. How many times have you and your team been pulled into a participatory budgeting work session or a finance committee session, right? And all your team members are freaking out because it's like, hey, you do realize that we've got like 15 or 20 more points to burn before the end of this sprint. And we're in a meeting with 157 people that doesn't make any sense to us, right? Go ahead and anticipate that, right? I mean, let the team acknowledge it. And you know what? Again, we're setting expectations up front. Hey, team agreed that we're not going to be in these non-value added work sessions or meetings with the company here because they're not pertinent to our whip. Let's protect our work in progress time, right? Now, some of these meetings we're going to have to attend. Some of these meetings we may, as a team, and we may be able to get the grace you poured down on us that we don't have to attend these. So let's go ahead and write them down, right? Let's go ahead and say, hey, you need to turn your video on for these kinds of work sessions, but you don't really need to have it for those kinds of work sessions, right? I think that only helps us, right? And then finally, we're not going to have any work sessions, right, during this time and that time on that day or that day, right? That way we can all be on the same page, and your team members are going to continue to ask you, hey, I got an invite for this meeting? Do I really need to go to that meeting? Um, Go ahead and nail that down right here, okay? Again, keep this, leave it, edit it, make it your own. It's all on you. Team rhythm, cadence, and ceremonies is another topic or another area that you can cover in your working agreements. Again, you can keep all of these, some of these, none of these, whatever. But what rhythm do you and your team expect? Now, look, going back to domain language, let's talk about this a little bit. Are you using the term ceremony or event? Are you using the term meeting or session? Are you using the term, what terms are you using here? Go ahead and identify those in here. So I'm the old school guy. I'm going to call sprint planning, the stand up, the demo, the retro. I'm going to call all that stuff ceremonies because I just like the word ceremony. I think it was more appropriate. That's just me. But whatever it is, make sure that you guys are getting on the same page with your team and you're calling it out and you're stating that ceremony, daily stand up ceremony at blah, 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 whatever, same time, same place, same channel, so we can set that expectation, get into the routine, and we can make sure that that we're all on one accord here going forward. Now, one thing I see on this screen, and you're going to find it here on the bottom left, is this open availability forum between 9 and 10 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What is that about? Well, look, today you're in for a treat because I'm going to deliver to you from yours truly the product owner pro tip. So, this product owner pro tip for this video, well, here's what I found. You got a new team that's starting out. You're diving into a lot of unknown concepts, right? It's getting really deep, and you got a lot of people who may be just totally lost like an Easter egg in high grass, right? And they need to maybe catch up to the content, or maybe they need to just have a few more questions and bend your ear about something. Or maybe they don't feel real comfortable talking about it in the daily stand up yet, right? In front of all of their peers. So let's give them a safe place to do that, product owner. Take yourself 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, an hour, whatever you got. Make it a standing time. And it's like, hey, do drop in at this time because I'm going to be available for you. And it's an open book, open forum kind of thing. Talk to me about whatever it is, no judging. If I got the answer, I'll give it. If I don't have the answer, I'll go find it and we'll catch back up on it. Okay. So, this is something that I think might be really helpful for you as a product owner, particularly if you have a new team or if you're struggling with a big concept, and maybe even if you're trying to explore a lot of the unknown with a very large effort. So that is your product owner pro tip for the day in this video. Thank you very much for entertaining me on that. Hope it helps. So now let's talk about another topic, workflow. How are we going to inspect and adapt and assure flow? How do we define classes of service, work types, priority, systems, and boards? I mean by that. What are some of the rules around the entry, exit, and demo? All that sort of thing, right? So let's look at some examples of that here on the screen. So the definition of done. Where is it? What is it? How does that look and feel? I'm not covering that in this video because here's your flat news flash of the day. Working agreements and definition of done, not the same thing. You probably already got that. I hope you do. All right. So what about the definition of ready? Do we have a definition of ready? Do we need that? Right. Those are the kinds of things that you want to put in here around workflow. Some of the other things about workflow is if a team is swarming, are you swarming based on a class of service or a priority? And if you are swarming work, then are you required to have a pilot or a primary and a co-pilot or a secondary, right? So those are the things, again, you just want to make sure you're covering that in your team working agreement so everybody understands how to operate, okay? So I hope this part is helpful to you about the workflow itself. We want to make sure we've got rules around these columns. Where how's that work here? Yeah, there we go. These columns around the board, right? We want to make sure we have rules around that. So when can we pull? When can we not pull? Right. Okay, so decision making. Let's get to this one because this one is really important. And we don't think about this a lot when we're talking about working agreements, but I think it's something worthwhile to look at. Okay. Again, it's not a requirement. I don't think there's like a requirement around working agreements. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. You make it your own. But from a decision making standpoint, let's say that your team is working on a lot of database centric type stuff, like you're creating tables or indexes or store procedures, or there's some big technical thing there. I've seen this before where teams really need to have a DBA or some system architect to approve the work before it goes into the next environment. Or they even need to get the solution approved, or maybe even that person needs to do the work for them, right? So these are the kinds of things about decision making that we need to make sure that we're documenting in our working agreements as a team. Now, NFRs, perf and pen, those are other considerations. Go, no go, who makes that call, right? Who accepts or rejects the work? Leaders, if you're listening to this, I hope it's your product owner. Product owner, I hope it's you. But sometimes we get into an occasion or two, or into a situation where we have to have some done work accepted by a small committee or a group or whatever. I get that, okay. But let's make sure that we put it in here, okay, because it's really important. Now, when you're talking about iteration goals or sprint goals, who is creating those? Is that the team? Should be. Is it just you? Or maybe you're getting that pushed down to you because you're a new team with already this big qualified backlog of work that you're executing, and you might be hitting milestones up against that. I don't know. So make that your own again. Where does compliance have to decide? Where does UI UX have to decide? Where does the product owner and the team have final approval? So these are just some things to consider in here. Now, again, resources, info, and communication. I kind of put this one last. It could be first. It could be just integrated. I don't know. You do with it what you want. Who are we? What are we doing? What's our purpose? No, your purpose is not we write code that takes pictures of checks. That's not it. Okay. I know I refer to that a lot in the podcast about, well, I just take pictures of checks because I've heard that story all my life. No, it's not that. uh, your purpose should be some value driven purpose, right? Well, we present items to customers so they can rest assured that their money is safe with us, whatever the point is. Okay, I'm just kind of making that up and pulling it off the top of my bald head here, but you get it, right? Who do we need and what do we need for supporting us? I think that's a resource topic. What about environments and things like that? How do we manage conflicts when someone's not available? Where do we put the information? Who puts it there? Maybe how do we even move stuff, right? Um, I always make it a point in here to think about things that other people may ask me about who does what and where I can find this information. Right. That's where this kind of the rubber hits the road for me, so to speak, because I want to make sure that I am anticipating questions from the audience, from the stakeholders, from the sponsors, from other teams if I'm in a scaled model, right? So I want to make sure I'm anticipating that. I'm documenting, I'm writing it down. Now, again, going back to the beginning of this video, I told you I've seen some elaborate templates out there. I'm going to go back to it. Look, my 3-year-old sticker here. I keep it on my desk all the time. It's basic. It's bullet point. People want to read simple stuff. They want bullet point information. Most executives, most director level folks, they just want to get to the detail, right? They don't want to read a dissertation. This does not have to be wordy. we're going to meet here, there, and there. This is what we call it. And for this ceremony, it's this date and time. We've got code words here that says wham, Elmo, and pineapple. And you know what? We're not going to attend your stinking non-whip related meetings. No, kid, we don't put that in there. But you get what I'm saying. So just a bullet pointed list right here. And you can collapse, combine, modify, amend, take some of this, none of this, all of this, whatever, make it your own. Again, this is for your benefit. Thinking patterns. I hope I've helped you with them in this about teamwork and agreements. You know what I'd really love though? I'd really love your comments and feedback down here. Okay. So if you would just drop me a note. Did you like this? Was it terrible? Did you already think of that? What else are you thinking about? Because I want to learn from you as well. That's what we're doing here in this community. So I hope you learned something from this video. I hope it was helpful to you. And don't forget about the podcast, Planet Product Owner. You can find it on any of your listening platforms. And until next time, have a safe and fun lean journey, my friends.